Hey guys, Kyodai Kino here, and welcome to the first of 3 videos dealing with the 3 seasons of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and how they compare to their Japanese counterparts from Super Sentai. I'm doing this as 3 videos partially because I have the original script that I wrote right here and recorded the narration of in the same style as my other 2 videos, but that turned out to be about 45 minutes long, which seems like a little bit much. So I'm going to split that up so it's a little more digestible. I'm also going to do it this way, kind of on camera, with clips cut in where needed, just to make editing quicker for one thing, so I can get these out faster, and also hopefully to decrease the issue of copyright claims on my videos, which were kind of an issue with the last 2 more essay format ones. So let's jump right into it. You know, Power Rangers. If you're an American kaiju fan, you've heard it brought up. It's definitely the most visible and popular tokusatsu franchise in the US. Maybe not as strongly associated with Japan as something like Godzilla, but I don't think the kinship's really lost on anybody. I don't remember exactly when I learned that it was adapted from a Japanese show. It wasn't all that surprising. But I first saw Power Rangers when I was on kind of a so bad it's good kick in about 6th grade. And I saw my first bit of Super Sentai around the same time. The guy I bought my Godzilla bootlegs from at the time had a DVD set with about the first 10 episodes of Chojin Sentai Jetman on one disc, and then another with a handful of episodes from around the middle of Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger from like old VHS fan subs. And so I had some familiarity with both, but it's only kind of been over the past summer or so that I've made a little bit more of a concerted effort to, you know, get through all 3 seasons of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and also see the 3 Super Sentai series that these seasons draw on. Zyuranger, Dairanger, and Kakuranger, you know, respectively. So let's just start right off the bat with Season 1 of Power Rangers. I would say out of the first 3 seasons of the show, Season 1 is easily the strongest. There's basically no trace of the kind of ad hoc, improvised narrative elements that would come into play in Seasons 2 and 3 out of necessity working with different source material. And aside from some tweaks to the premise and the kind of style of the whole show, there's a bit of an if it's not broken, don't fix it mentality to the whole thing. You know, they add some sort of American superhero conventions with, you know, ordinary kids with secret identities, a bit more of a sci-fi theme. But in terms of this whole, you know, the story beats and everything, it's villain appears, Rangers assembled by their mentor, they get new weapons, 6th Ranger shows up, originally works with the villains, joins the team, they have kind of the rise and fall. The first 40 episodes of Power Rangers are, you know, a pretty straightforward adaptation of the 50 episodes of Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. There are some elements that are kind of symptomatic of a series kind of finding its footing early on, setting its tone. Like there's the Rad Bug, which shows up partway through the season, adapted from a flying car in Zyuranger, and it appears pretty frequently for a little while and is eventually just kind of quietly forgotten and never mentioned again. So the original Power Ranger team is extremely well balanced and just well rounded. They have strong personalities, they complement each other, and there's plenty to work with in terms of how their characters kind of bounce off each other and the chemistry between different members of the team. You've got Jason, the Red Ranger, who's a dedicated martial artist, martial arts teacher, natural leader, you know, someone who's kind of bold, a little bit brash, but he's also got a strong sense of kindness and just kind of decency. Like, he's really great, wants to help other people become more confident in themselves and that kind of thing. You know, great guy. You've got Trini, the Yellow Ranger. She's smart, she's conscientious, she has a bit of an activist streak, kind of spearheading this environmental cleanup campaign in one episode. She's really supportive, she's loyal to her friends, and she also kind of translates for Billy, who is kind of the team's tech whiz and, you know, talks in sort of technobabble a lot of the time that other people can't understand. And then there's Kimberly, the Pink Ranger. She's kind of a valley girl, but, you know, kind but also tough. And then there's Zach, the Black Ranger, who's kind of a fun-loving, easygoing guy who works these dance moves into his fighting style. The characters are simple but well defined, they work together well, and the cast do a good job playing them. There's some clunky line deliveries because, honestly, who could say some of these lines well? But for 5 people in their first major roles, I think some of them hadn't even acted before, it seems like they're having a great time with the characters, and they do a pretty good job playing them. I think one of the most obvious differences between Power Rangers and Zyuranger is kind of the origins and characterization of the heroes. The Power Rangers are a group of friends given powers by Zordon, who's this kind of, sci-fi space wizard sort of character. Whereas the Zyurangers are ancient warriors from tribes that lived alongside the dinosaurs. It plays very fast and loose with natural history. It's very fantasy-driven, that sort of thing. And they were sealed away in case of the return of the witch Bandora, who of course is Rita Repulsa in Power Rangers. In both shows, the evil witch is accidentally released by a couple of astronauts, which leads to Zordon summoning the Power Rangers, giving them their powers, and in Zyuranger, the sage Barza reawakening these ancient warriors to take on the returning threat. Some people pointed out a kind of technology versus magic motif in Power Rangers with, the Power Rangers having this sort of technological sci-fi theme with giant robots and everything, and the villains being, more magic. The leader's an evil witch, and they have all these evil spells and that sort of thing, potions, all that. In Zyuranger, both sides are basically fantasy themed, so that subtext really isn't there at all. And it leads into kind of a really different subtext, a little more culturally specific to Japan. There's sort of a contrast a lot of the time in Western fiction between technology and magic or spirituality, whereas in Japan, they kind of sometimes conflate them or present technology as a modern form of or vessel for magic. Like, just for instance, the giant mecha in the show, in Power Rangers, they're just giant robots. But in Zyuranger, they're depicted as ancient guardian spirits. They're sentient, they have their own minds and everything, their own spirits, but they're also visually depicted as giant robots. What's kind of interesting is this was actually a bit of a first for Super Sentai, which up to that point had been a little bit harder sci-fi. Zyuranger was the first one that was really strongly fantasy themed. Zyuranger is also a little more mature and a little more graphic in certain respects than Power Rangers, which seems to be a general trend with Japanese media for kids as opposed to American media for kids. There are some darker and more explicit religious and mythological references there's this one thing called Lokar in Power Rangers. In Zyuranger, it's sometimes translated as Great Satan, Die Satan, Great Saturn. It depends on the translation you're watching. In Zyuranger, to summon this creature, there's a ritual involving a bunch of kidnapped children. That's completely glossed over in Power Rangers. There's none of that shit. The stakes in Zyuranger are also portrayed as higher in terms of human life. Power Rangers is usually euphemistic about death. They'll talk about somebody being destroyed or history or, I think once losing their life.
But if I don't get the candle in time, he'll lose his powers.
If we don't get to him in time, he'll lose his life.
The only explicit reference to death is in the movie, which is its own thing. And sometimes they'd say, giant monsters were destroying abandoned buildings, or they were in the warehouse district, which I guess is less densely populated. I don't know. In Zyuranger, death is just part of the stakes more often. It has more of a presence in the story. Famously in Power Rangers, after the Green Ranger, Tommy, breaks free of Rita Repulsa's mind control and joins the Power Rangers, she creates a green candle that when it burns down, it'll take away his powers. In Zyuranger, it turns out that the equivalent, Burai, the brother of the Red Ranger, Geki, actually died while in suspended animation and has only been resurrected for a limited time. And so when this green candle burns down, he will die. And spoiler alert, he does die late in the show. Now you might have noticed what I said earlier about the first 40 episodes of Power Rangers being an adaptation of Zyuranger. but if you actually go and look up the show, season 1 is 60 episodes long. So what are those other 20? Well, originally the American producers of Power Rangers, Saban Entertainment, figured they were just going to do this one season. It would be 40 episodes, ending with this two-parter called Doomsday that adapts the ending of Zyuranger, where the Rangers storm Bandora's palace and banish her back to space. And if you watch the episodes in their final form, it does kind of still feel like a finale. The plot involves a public ceremony in one of the local parks honoring the Power Rangers. Tommy shows back up for a surprise cameo, and Zordon actually gives them the option to quit and give up their powers, which makes more sense if Rita is no longer an active threat. But then something happened that they didn't really anticipate. Power Rangers became a huge hit. So they actually went and hastily revised the ending of the Doomsday episode to have Rita still at large at the end so they could continue the series. The thing is, even with that ending rewritten, Power Rangers was still running up against the problem that would force the cancellation of other shows similarly adapted by Saban, like VR Troopers and Big Bad Beetleborgs. They basically exhausted all of the Zyuranger footage that they could use. In order to stall for time, they managed to cobble together 2 more episodes out of an unused Monster of the Week episode from Zyuranger and footage from an episode they had previously adapted and simply reused. But the thing is, if they were going to extend the show's run any more than that, they were going to need more Japanese footage. So what they did was actually went to Toei Studios, the producers of the Super Sentai series, and commissioned about another half season's worth of action scenes from them. This meant a bunch of new monsters, footage of those monsters fighting the Power Rangers, and eventually giant-scale mecha fights. This actually wasn't the first new material that Toei had shot specifically for Power Rangers. There was a clause in the contract in which Saban acquired the rights to adapt and distribute Super Sentai in the US that stipulated that Toei would regather the cast that played the villains and shoot some new footage with them over about 2 days of just generic interactions that they could easily edit together in different ways and dub over however they needed. They also shot a few scenes of actors delivering lines in English for better lip sync, such as
Go, Putty Patrol, attack the Power Rangers!
And of course, the famous
Magic Wand! Make my monster!
However, that earlier material was basically just stock footage to give the editors a little more to work with. The new action footage, which fans call Zyu 2, was about 25 more Zyuranger episodes worth of stunts, special effects, monster fights, all that sort of thing, which Saban stretched over the remaining 18 episodes of Season 1 and the first 13 episodes of Season 2. It also provided an opportunity to bring back the fan favorite Green Ranger, Tommy, and also to bring the Japanese and American characterizations of the Rangers into closer alignment. For example, since Tommy and Kimberly were dating in Power Rangers, the Green and Pink Rangers were portrayed as a little bit closer than they'd been on Zyuranger. The Blue Ranger is shown using a lot of gadgets to reflect Billy's status as kind of the tech genius on the team. The Rangers are shown speaking into wrist communicators, which were an invention of the American version of the show, and the Yellow Ranger, while still portrayed by a male stunt actor, is given more feminine body language, reflecting the fact that in the US the Yellow Ranger was changed to a girl to balance out the gender dynamics on the team a little bit more. There are also some elements that are a little bit geared more towards American culture, like a rapping pumpkin monster and a monster fight involving elements of American football. The thing about the Zyu 2 episodes, though, is that they introduce a bit of a problem that would become more pronounced in seasons 2 and 3. The original 40 episodes of Power Rangers were basically a self-contained story, mirroring that of Zyuranger. But the thing is now, the original conclusion happens about 2/3 of the way through the season as it exists, and the rest of the episodes are, another third of the season's worth of standard Monster of the Week episodes. As opposed to the finale that Doomsday would have been, Season 1 now ends with a standard episode in which Zack is tricked into buying cursed pearl earrings for his girlfriend, the Rangers fight an oyster monster, rinse and repeat. So in the end, which is better between Mighty Morphin Power Rangers first season and Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger? Honestly, I'm gonna have to call this one a tie. Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger has much better storytelling, more pathos, more stakes, you know. The stories are a little more coherent on account of the fact that they don't have to cut around, you know, another show's footage. But at the same time, Power Rangers has something that Zyuranger really didn't, which is a really memorable core cast. The Zyurangers are all likable, but they're not that distinct as characters, whereas in Power Rangers, everybody has a distinct personality and they all complement each other. Like I said, it's a well-rounded team. Whereas the Zyurangers were a little more one note. But all in all, the first season of Power Rangers does a really solid job at what it aims to do, narrative pacing aside. And so I honestly really can't choose one over the other in this case. I guess everybody wins. Thanks for watching, guys. I should have my Patreon up by the time I upload this. Unless YouTube has some kind of restrictions about linking to it, I'll just, you know, say where to go then. Because I haven't really enrolled in their, you know, partner programs. So be sure to check that out if you want to support, you know, videos like these and other projects I've got in the works. And be sure to check out my social media, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr for, you know, updates on upcoming videos. I should have the Season 2 video up pretty soon. By the time you see this, it'll already be shot and everything. I'll just be editing it. So yeah, thanks for giving this a watch. Be sure to come back and check that out. I'll see you guys next time.